Daniel Carter had been alone for 3 years. His ship, the Dusty Horizon, was a small freight hauler that moved cargo between the outer colonies. It was not a fast ship. It was not a pretty ship. But it was his, and it kept him alive in the cold emptiness of space. The loneliness was the hardest part. Daniel talked to himself sometimes. He talked to the ship's computer, even though it only gave short answers. He watched old movies from Earth and pretended he was sitting in a room full of people. But pretending only worked for so long. One night, after a particularly long stretch through empty space, Daniel made a decision. He opened his communication terminal and searched through a deep space catalog. Many long-haul pilots ordered synthetic companions. They were androids designed to look human, programmed to talk and laugh and keep a person company. It was not something Daniel ever thought he would do. But the silence had become too heavy. He placed his order at a transfer station called Relay Point 7. The catalog said delivery would take 2 weeks. Daniel waited. He felt a little embarrassed, a little hopeful. Maybe things would be better with someone to talk to, even if that someone was made of metal and circuits. The delivery pod arrived on schedule. Daniel docked the Dusty Horizon and walked to the cargo bay where the pod waited. It was a standard shipping container, about the size of a large coffin. Daniel checked the serial number. It matched his order. He pressed the release button. The lid hissed open and cold vapor spilled out. Daniel leaned forward, expecting to see a synthetic face with closed eyes, waiting to be activated. What he saw made his heart stop. Inside the pod was a young female, but she was not human. Her skin was pale lavender, almost purple in the dim light. Her hair was long and silver, tangled and dirty. Her body was thin, too thin, and covered in bruises. Energy chains wrapped around her wrists and ankles, glowing faintly with a cruel blue light. She was real. She was alive. And she was terrified. Her eyes opened. They were silver, like her hair, and filled with a fear so deep that Daniel felt it in his own chest. She saw him and tried to pull away, but the chains held her in place. A small, broken sound escaped her throat. Daniel stepped back, his mind racing. This was not a synthetic companion. This was a living person. Someone had put her in this pod. Someone had shipped her like cargo. The word hit him like a punch to the gut. Slavery. He had heard stories about trafficking in the outer regions of the galaxy. Species that captured others and sold them to the highest bidder. Daniel had always thought those stories were exaggerated. Now he knew they were true. The alien female stared at him with those silver eyes. She was waiting for him to hurt her. Daniel could see it in her face. She expected pain. She expected cruelty. That was all she knew now. Daniel took a slow breath. He raised his hands so she could see them, showing that he held no weapon. "I am not going to hurt you," he said quietly. "Do you understand me?" She did not answer. Her body trembled. Daniel moved slowly to his toolkit and pulled out a plasma torch. Her eyes went wide with terror. He stopped and showed her the tool. "This is to cut the chains," he said. "Only the chains. I promise." He approached carefully, like a man approaching a wounded animal. She pulled back as far as she could, but there was nowhere to go. Daniel knelt beside the pod and touched the first chain. The plasma torch cut through it easily. Then the second chain. Then the third and fourth. The chains fell away, and she was free. She did not move. She lay in the pod, shaking, as if she did not believe what had just happened. Daniel stepped back again. He found a blanket from a storage locker and held it out to her. "It is cold," he said. "Please take this." After a long moment, her hand reached out. Her fingers were thin and trembling. She took the blanket and wrapped it around herself, still watching him with fearful eyes. Daniel crouched down so he was at her level. He kept his voice soft. "My name is Daniel. I am a human. I haul cargo for a living. I ordered a synthetic companion because I was lonely. I did not order you. Someone made a mistake, or someone did this on purpose. I do not know which. But I know one thing." He paused, looking into her silver eyes. "I am not going to send you back. I am not going to sell you. I am going to help you." She stared at him. Her cracked lips parted, and she spoke for the first time. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Please." Just that one word. But Daniel heard everything in it. "Please do not hurt me. Please do not lie to me. Please let this be real." He nodded slowly. "I promise." Daniel helped her out of the pod. She could barely stand. Her legs were weak from being trapped for so long. He supported her weight and guided her to the small medical bay on his ship. It was not much, just a bed and some basic supplies, but it was warm and clean. He set her down on the bed and found water and a protein bar. She drank the water quickly, desperately, like someone who had not tasted it in days. She ate the food the same way. Daniel sat in a chair across from her, giving her space. He watched as her trembling slowly began to fade. The fear was still there, deep in her eyes. But there was something else now. A tiny spark of hope outside the window. The stars drifted past in the endless black. Somewhere out there, the people who had done this to her were still free. They were still hurting others. Daniel looked at the young alien female wrapped in his blanket, and he made a silent promise. He did not know who she was. He did not know where she came from. But he would protect her. He would find out what happened, and he would make sure no one ever put her in chains again. The first 3 days were the hardest. The alien female would not speak. She would not leave the medical bay. When Daniel brought her food and water, she waited until he left the room before touching it. If he stayed too long, she pressed herself against the wall, making herself as small as possible. Daniel learned to be patient. He left meals outside the door. He spoke to her through the wall, telling her simple things about himself. His name, where he grew up on Earth, how he became a freight hauler. He did not expect answers. He just wanted her to know she was safe. On the 4th day, something changed. Daniel was sitting in the cockpit, running a system check, when he heard soft footsteps behind him. He turned slowly and saw her standing in the doorway. She was still wrapped in the blanket, still thin and pale, but her eyes were different now. Less afraid, more curious. "Hello," Daniel said gently. "Are you feeling better?" She nodded once. A small movement, but it meant everything. Daniel pointed to the co-pilot seat beside him. "Would you like to sit?" She hesitated for a long moment. Then she walked forward and lowered herself into the seat. She looked at the control panels and the wide window filled with stars. Her silver eyes reflected the distant lights. "It is beautiful," she whispered. Daniel smiled. "It is. I forget sometimes, because I see it every day. But yes, space is beautiful." They sat in silence for a while. Daniel did not push her to talk. He let her watch the stars and feel the peace of the moment. Finally, she spoke again. "My name is Velara." "Velara," Daniel repeated. "That is a nice name. I am of the Selvari people." She paused, as if deciding whether to continue. "My father is King Thauron. I am his eldest daughter. I was the heir to our empire." Daniel felt his stomach tighten. A princess. He had rescued a princess. What happened? He asked quietly. Velara's hands twisted in her lap. The memories were painful. Daniel could see that. But she forced herself to speak. "I was traveling with my convoy to a diplomatic meeting. We had 20 ships and 100 guards. I thought we were safe." Her voice became hollow. "The Drakari came from nowhere. They hit us with weapons we could not stop. Our ships burned. My guards fought and died. I watched them fall, one by one. Her silver eyes grew wet, but no tears fell. They took me. They beat me when I tried to fight. They put me in chains and sold me through their networks. I was passed from one buyer to another. Each time, they hurt me more. Each time, I lost more hope. Daniel's fists clenched under the console. He felt a cold anger building in his chest. The final buyer, Velara continued, was a collector of rare things. He wanted a royal slave. The Drakari put me in that pod and shipped me like cargo. But something went wrong with the delivery. The pod came to you instead. A mistake, Daniel said. Or fate, Velara replied. She looked at him with those silver eyes. You could have sent me back. You could have sold me yourself. The buyer would have paid you well. That never crossed my mind, Daniel said honestly. Why? Velara asked. You do not know me. You owe me nothing. Why risk yourself for a stranger? Daniel leaned back in his chair and thought about the question. It deserved a real answer. On Earth, he said, we have stories about people who stand up when others fall down. Heroes, we call them. I never thought I was one. I am just a freight hauler. I move boxes from one place to another. But my father taught me something when I was young. He said that the measure of a person is not what they do when it is easy. It is what they do when it is hard. He looked at Velara. Helping you is hard. It will probably get me in trouble. The Drakari will come looking for their merchandise. But none of that matters. What matters is that you are a person, not cargo. And people deserve to be treated with kindness. Velara was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, she reached out and touched his hand. Her fingers were cool and soft. Among my people, she said, we have a word for someone like you. Thalver. It means one who carries light into dark places. I thought such people only existed in old stories. I did not think I would meet one. Daniel felt uncomfortable with the praise. He was not used to it. I am just doing what is right, he said. That is exactly what makes you rare, Velara replied. Over the next few days, Velara grew stronger. She ate more. She slept better. She began to walk around the ship, exploring its small rooms and narrow corridors. Daniel showed her how the systems worked, how the engines hummed, how the navigation computer charted their course through the stars. She was smart and quick to learn. Daniel found himself enjoying her company more than he expected. The silence that had weighed on him for 3 years began to lift. The dusty horizon felt less like a prison and more like a home. But Daniel knew the peace would not last. One evening, while running a routine scan, he detected something on the edge of his sensors. Ships. 3 of them, moving fast. Coming from the direction of Relay Point 7. His blood went cold. Velara, he called. Come to the cockpit, now. She appeared moments later, sensing the tension in his voice. What is it? Daniel pointed at the scanner display. 3 red dots, closing in. The Drakari, he said. They found us. Velara's face went pale. The fear returned to her eyes. The fear Daniel had worked so hard to chase away. He turned to her and put his hands on her shoulders. Listen to me, he said firmly. I made you a promise. I am going to keep it. They are not taking you. Not today. Not ever. Velara looked at him, searching his face for any sign of doubt. She found none. What are we going to do? She asked. Daniel smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Only cold determination. We are going to fight. Commander Zeth Karn stood on the bridge of his warship, staring at the small freight hauler on his display screen. He was not a patient creature. His species, the Drakari, were built for violence. Their gray skin was thick as armor. Their eyes were black and cold. Their hands had claws that could tear through metal. For decades, Karn had built his reputation on fear. He trafficked in living beings, and no one dared to stop him. until now. Report, Koran growled at his officer. The human ship is the Dusty Horizon, Commander. It is a civilian freighter. 1 crew member. No weapons. Koran bared his sharp teeth in a smile. 1 human. How disappointing. I expected more of a challenge. The merchandise he sought was valuable. A silvery princess sold to a wealthy collector who paid a fortune. But the delivery had gone wrong, and the princess ended up in the hands of some random freight hauler. A mistake. An expensive mistake. Koran intended to correct it. He opened a communication channel to the Dusty Horizon. Human, he said, his voice harsh and deep. You have something that belongs to me. Surrender the Selvari female immediately, and I will let you live. There was a pause. Then a human voice came through the speakers. It was calm and steady. She does not belong to you. She does not belong to anyone. She is a free person. Koran laughed. The sound echoed through his bridge, and his crew joined in. You are brave, human. Or stupid. Perhaps both. You are alone on a cargo ship with no weapons. I have 3 warships and 50 soldiers. This is not a negotiation. This is a demand. Another pause. When the human spoke again, his voice had changed. It was colder now. Harder. You think I do not know the odds? I know them. But here is what you do not know. Humans do not surrender. We do not give up our own. And right now, that woman in my ship is under my protection. If you want her, you will have to come through me. Koran felt a flicker of something he had not felt in years. Curiosity. Interesting, he said. Prepare boarding parties. I want that human alive. I want to see his face when he watches us take her. The 3 Drakari ships surrounded the Dusty Horizon. Boarding pods launched from each one, carrying teams of armed soldiers. They latched onto the freighter's hull and began cutting through. Inside the Dusty Horizon, Daniel worked fast. He had spent the last hour preparing. The ship's cargo bay was rigged with traps. Fuel canisters set to explode. Loose panels designed to fall and block doorways. He had taken every weapon he owned, a plasma pistol and an old ballistic rifle that belonged to his grandfather, and loaded them both. Valara stood beside him, holding a stun rod that Daniel had given her. Stay behind me, Daniel said. If anything happens to me, there is an escape pod in the engine room. Get to it and launch. The computer will take you to the nearest Earth station. Valara shook her head. I will not leave you. This is not a discussion. You are right. It is not. Her silver eyes met his. You stayed for me. I stay for you. That is how it works. Daniel wanted to argue, but there was no time. The first airlock burst open. Drakari soldiers poured into the cargo bay. They were huge, nearly 7 feet tall, covered in dark armor and carrying plasma rifles. Their black eyes scanned the room, searching for targets. Daniel fired. His first shot hit the lead soldier in the chest. The plasma round burned through the armor, and the Drakari fell. The others scattered, taking cover behind cargo containers. One human with a pistol. One of them shouted, "Take him down." They returned fire. Plasma bolts screamed through the air, burning holes in the walls and floor. Daniel ducked behind a support beam, his heart pounding. He waited for the right moment, then stepped out and fired again. Another Drakari fell. 3 more rushed him from the left. Daniel shot one, but the other 2 were too fast. One of them swung a clawed hand and caught Daniel across the shoulder. Pain exploded through his body as the claws tore through his jacket and skin. Daniel stumbled back. Blood ran down his arm. But he did not fall. He raised his pistol and put a shot through the Drakari's skull. The last soldier lunged at him. Daniel sidestepped and slammed the butt of his rifle into the creature's face. Bones cracked. The Drakari dropped. More were coming. Daniel could hear them cutting through another airlock. He pressed a button on his wrist communicator. The fuel canisters in the cargo bay exploded. Fire and smoke filled the room. Drakari screamed as flames consumed them. Daniel grabbed Valara's hand and pulled her through a side corridor. "We need to reach the cockpit," he said, breathing hard. "I need to send a message." "What message?" "One that will change everything." They reached the cockpit, and Daniel threw himself into the pilot's seat. His shoulder burned with pain, but he ignored it. He opened every communication frequency available, both Earth Coalition channels and galactic broadcast frequencies. He began transmitting. "This is Daniel Carter, civilian freighter Dusty Horizon. I am under attack by the Drakari Syndicate. They are attempting to recapture a kidnapped prisoner, Princess Valara of the Selvari Empire. I am transmitting all evidence of her abduction and the Drakari trafficking network. This is not a distress call. This is a declaration. The galaxy needs to see what these monsters are doing." He uploaded the data files he had compiled, Valara's testimony, the shipping records from the pod. Everything. Then he picked up his rifle and turned to face the door. "Now we hold the line," he said. Valara stood beside him. Stun rod ready, fear and determination battling in her silver eyes. The door burst open. Drakari flooded in, and Daniel Carter, a lonely freight hauler from Earth, began to fight. The cockpit became a war zone. Daniel fired into the first wave of Drakari soldiers, dropping 2 before they could get through the door. A third lunged at him, claws outstretched. Daniel ducked under the swipe and jammed his pistol into the creature's stomach. He pulled the trigger, and the soldier collapsed. But there were too many. A plasma bolt caught Daniel in the side. He gasped as heat burned through his flesh. Another shot grazed his leg. He fell against the console, his vision blurring. Valara screamed his name. She stepped forward and swung the stun rod with all her strength. It connected with a Drakari's neck, and electricity crackled through the creature's body. It convulsed and fell. She swung again, catching another soldier in the face. Daniel pushed himself up. Blood soaked his shirt and dripped onto the floor, but he kept fighting. He grabbed a fallen Drakari's rifle and fired. The heavy plasma rounds tore through the attackers, punching holes in armor and bodies. 6 Drakari lay dead. But more were coming through the corridors. Then, suddenly, the ship shuddered. At first, Daniel thought it was another explosion. But the vibration was different, deeper, more powerful. Something massive had just dropped out of hyperspace nearby. His communication console lit up with incoming signals. Multiple signals. Too many to count. A voice cut through the static. It was human. "Dusty Horizon. This is Admiral Grace Patterson of the Earth Defense Coalition. We received your distress call. Hold your position. Help is here." Daniel felt a wave of relief crash over him. He leaned against the console and laughed, though it came out as more of a cough. "Copy that, Admiral," he managed. "I could use a hand." Outside the window, the stars shifted. New ships appeared, one after another. Earth Coalition cruisers, sleek and deadly, their weapons already powering up. They surrounded the Drakari vessels like wolves circling prey. But that was not all. A Akanos, massive ship emerged from hyperspace behind the Coalition fleet. It was larger than anything Daniel had ever seen. Its hull was silver and gold, covered in elegant patterns that caught the light. The Selvari royal crest blazed on its side. "Valara," Daniel said softly. "Look." She turned to the window, and her breath caught in her throat. "Father," she whispered. On the bridge of the Selvari flagship, King Thalran stood at the command center. He was tall and regal, with the same lavender skin and silver eyes as his daughter. But his eyes burned with a fury that made his officers step back. "Commander Koran," he said, his voice transmitted across all frequencies. You took my daughter. You put her in chains. You sold her like an animal. There is no hole in this galaxy deep enough for you to hide." Corin's voice came through, but it had lost its arrogance. There was fear now. Real fear. "King Thaurin, there has been a misunderstanding. We did not know she was of royal blood. We can negotiate." "There will be no negotiation," Thaurin interrupted. "Surrender now, or I will reduce your ships to dust and scatter your ashes across the void." The Drakari soldiers on the dusty horizon froze. Their commander was trapped. Their fleet was surrounded. The mission had failed. They lowered their weapons. Admiral Patterson's voice came through again. "Dusty Horizon Coalition Marines are boarding now. Stay where you are." Minutes later, human soldiers in combat armor stormed through the ship. They secured the surviving Drakari and called for medical teams. A young medic rushed to Daniel's side and began treating his wounds. "Sir, you need to get to a hospital," the medic said. "These injuries are serious." "I am fine," Daniel muttered. "Check on her first." The medic looked at Velara, who was unharmed but shaking. "She's okay," the medic said. "But you are not." "Please, sir, let us help you." Daniel finally nodded. He was too tired to argue. An hour later, the fighting was over. Corin and his crew were in custody. The Drakari ships were disabled and under Coalition control. News of the incident was already spreading across the galaxy, carried by the broadcast Daniel had sent. King Thaurin boarded the Dusty Horizon personally. He walked through the damaged corridors, stepping over scorch marks and broken panels. His royal guards followed, their faces grim. When he reached the medical bay, he found his daughter sitting beside a bed. On the bed lay Daniel, wrapped in bandages, barely conscious. Velara looked up. Tears streamed down her face, but she was smiling. "Father," she said, "this is Daniel Carter. He saved my life." Thaurin looked at the wounded human. He saw a small man on a small ship, covered in blood and burns. He saw no army, no fleet, no great power. Just one person who had refused to look away. The king knelt beside the bed. It was not a gesture he made lightly. Selvari royalty knelt only before the divine. "Daniel Carter of Earth," Thaurin said formally. "You stood alone against our enemies. You protected my daughter when no one else could. You bled for her. You nearly died for her. Words cannot express my gratitude." Daniel opened his eyes. His voice was weak but clear. "She needed help. I helped. That is all." Thaurin shook his head slowly. "No, that is not all. In my long life, I have met countless beings. Warriors, diplomats, kings. But I have never met anyone like you. Your courage shamans us all." He reached out and took Daniel's hand. "From this day forward, you are a friend of the Selvari Empire. Our resources are yours. Our protection is yours. Anything you ask, we will give." Daniel managed a small smile. "I just want to fix my ship," he said. "She took a beating today." Thaurin laughed. It was a warm sound, full of respect and affection. "Then we will give you the finest shipyard in the Empire." Velara leaned down and pressed her forehead to Daniel's. A gesture of deep gratitude in Selvari culture. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Daniel closed his eyes and let exhaustion take him. For the first time in 3 years, he did not feel alone. The news spread across the galaxy like fire. Every species with access to communications heard the story. A human freight hauler, a kidnapped princess, a one-man stand against a trafficking empire. The recordings Daniel had broadcast were played on news networks from one end of known space to the other. People watched as a single human fought off trained Drakari soldiers. They listened to his voice as he declared that no living being was cargo. They saw the moment the Earth Coalition and Selvari fleets arrived. surrounding the slavers and ending their operation. For many species, it was the first time they truly understood humans. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the fastest, the smartest, or the most technologically advanced. They came from a world so harsh and dangerous that other species called it a death world. They lived short lives compared to most aliens. They should have been insignificant, but they were not, because humans had something that could not be measured. A stubborn, irrational refusal to accept cruelty. A willingness to fight, not for power or profit, but for strangers they had never met. A belief that some things were worth dying for. The Drekari Syndicate collapsed within weeks. Commander Corrin was put on trial before a galactic court. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Thousands of victims, hundreds of trafficking routes, decades of suffering. He was sentenced to imprisonment for the rest of his life, locked in a cell on a frozen moon where he would never see another living soul. His network fell apart as other species began hunting slavers with new determination. The humans led the effort, but they were joined by Selvari, Corvani, Tethany, and dozens of other species who had been inspired by Daniel's stand. For the first time in galactic history, trafficking became not just illegal, but actively hunted. Ships patrolled the dark spaces between stars. Rescue teams freed captives from hidden markets. Slavers who once operated openly now ran and hid. And it all started with one man who refused to look away. Daniel spent 3 weeks recovering on the Selvari homeworld. The medical technology there was far beyond anything Earth had, and his wounds healed faster than he expected. The burns faded. The plasma damage was repaired. Soon, he was walking again, exploring the beautiful gardens of the royal palace. He was treated like a hero wherever he went. Servants bowed to him. Guards saluted. Nobles asked to meet him and hear his story firsthand. It made Daniel deeply uncomfortable. One evening, King Thalarin summoned him to the throne room. Daniel walked through halls of silver and gold, past tapestries that told the history of the Selvari Empire. When he reached the throne, he found the king waiting with a group of advisors. "Daniel Carter," Thalarin said formally, "you have done our empire a great service. We wish to reward you properly. Name your price. Wealth beyond measure. Titles and lands. A fleet of ships. A planet of your own. Whatever you desire, it is yours." Daniel stood quietly for a moment. Then he shook his head. "Your Majesty, I appreciate the offer. I really do. But I did not save Valara for a reward. I saved her because it was right. If I accept all of this, it changes the meaning of what I did." The advisors murmured in surprise. No one had ever refused a royal gift before. Thalarin studied him with those ancient silver eyes. "Then what do you want, Daniel Carter?" Surely there must be something. Daniel thought about it. "Fix my ship," he said finally. "She got pretty banged up. And maybe enough credits to cover fuel for a few years. That is all I need." Thalarin smiled. "You are a strange human, so I've been told." The king granted his request. The dusty horizon was taken to the finest shipyard in the empire and repaired with materials that made her stronger than ever. Her engines were upgraded. Her hull was reinforced. When Daniel saw her again, she looked almost new. On his last day on the Selvari homeworld, Valara came to see him. She found him in the hangar, running his hand along the side of his ship. She was dressed in royal clothing now, elegant and beautiful, but her silver eyes were the same as when he first saw them. Only the fear was gone, replaced by warmth. "You are leaving," she said. "I have to. I am a hauler. I haul things. It is what I do." Valara stepped closer. "You could stay. My father would give you anything. A home, a purpose, a life of comfort." Daniel smiled gently. That is not my life, Valara. I belong out there in the black. It is where I have always been. Will I see you again? The galaxy is not so big. Our paths will cross. Valara reached out and took his hand. Her touch was warm now, no longer the cold grip of a terrified captive. Among my people, we have a tradition, she said. When someone saves your life, you carry a piece of them with you forever. You are part of me now, Daniel Carter. No matter where you go, no matter how far you travel, I will remember you. Daniel squeezed her hand. And I will remember you, he said. The princess who fought beside me when she could have run. You are braver than you know. Valara smiled, and for a moment, the weight of her crown seemed lighter. Daniel climbed into his ship and powered up the engines. The hangar doors opened, revealing the endless stars beyond. He looked back one last time and saw Valara standing there, watching him. He raised a hand in farewell. She raised hers in return. The dusty horizon lifted off and flew into the sky. It passed through the atmosphere and entered the darkness of space. Daniel set a course for the outer colonies and engaged the engines. He was alone again. But something had changed. The silence did not feel so heavy anymore. The stars did not seem so cold. He had learned something about himself out here. Something he had forgotten during all those years of solitude. He was never truly alone. The people he helped, the lives he touched, they stayed with him. They were part of him now, just as he was part of them. Daniel smiled and leaned back in his chair. The galaxy was vast and full of darkness. But there was light, too. Small sparks in the endless night, carried by people who refused to give up on each other. And Daniel Carter, freight hauler, was one of them.